So the race for number 10 is hotting up, with Boris Johnson telling Sophie Ridge today that he would increase borrowing to invest in services and pay for tax cuts. He also claimed he could persuade EU leaders to reopen negotiations on the withdrawal agreement. His rival Jeremy Hunt said he is now prepared to leave the European Union without a deal, if necessary, on October the 31st. Joining us now from Westminster is the journalist and political commentator Jade Azim and reporter for Guido Fawkes, Tom Harwood. Hello to both of you. Jade Azim, maybe I'll start with you first. Did you see Boris Johnson on Sophie Ridge today? Made a number of spending pledges and talked about borrowing, and he reckoned there was a lot of cash for it. Are these just empty promises?
Most probably, but I think he actually gets away with it. We talk a lot about Boris's evasion of detail, but it's actually served him pretty well, and this sort of trying to step onto Labour territory probably serves him well in the number of Labour seats that he wants to get to, in terms of low-income Brexit voters. So it may serve him well for the duration of time of his campaign and any sort of general election. But yeah, I think during the Premiership we'll see that those promises are void.
Tom Harwood, I'll put it to you then. Can he deliver on these promises if he becomes Prime Minister?
Absolutely. What we've seen over the last few years is tight fiscal management and actually a sort of war chest being built up, particularly over the last 3 years, giving us billions of pounds of fiscal headroom. And that responsible managing of the finances over the last few years means that now there is cash available to, number one, keep debt falling as a proportion of GDP, but also invest in crucial areas like education, like our NHS. And this is what Boris has promised to do. And
he's talked for the first time today, really, about making pledges to help the lower paid. A few weeks ago, hadn't he? He said he's going to raise the threshold for higher earners, effectively helping them. So is that another factor that he really wants to do, or is he, again, just words? Tom Harwood.
Well, here's the thing. All of the promises that Boris has made on tax have been focused on people earning less than £80,000. These are the people that the Labour Party identified in the last general election as those they didn't want to raise taxes on. So he's really talking about what most people see to be middle and low-income earners. And so moving into areas of lifting people out of tax, raising those thresholds for the lowest paid in society, but also making sure that those middle-income earners, you know, people like teachers and doctors, aren't dragged into the higher tax brackets that they have been over years. This is sort of the crucial centre ground of politics where the Tories are going to have to set out their stall if they want to win in the future. Jade
Azim, is Boris Johnson the kind of character... I mean, many describe him as bumbling. Can he get away with that, then? Is that what you're suggesting? Because of the person he is, he can make comments and then people will see later on whether he delivers on these promises.
People are obsessed with the caricature that he's created, this sort of English bumbling, sort of, in a way, mock Churchillian, but sort of like going off tangent, going out of PC culture. It definitely does help him, and it helps him to evade questions because people are more obsessed with him being caught on a zip wire, him being just Boris. And I think the personal brand is why he's such a dangerous opponent. Yeah, absolutely.
But he remains the front runner. Is there any doubt that he will now get into number 10, Jade Azim?
I think looking at the Tory membership, I think that Jeremy Hunt would have to convince a lot of people round. He'd have to go even more hardline than he has today on no deal to convince those Tory members. And if you look at where they are, I think that I can't see a way that he doesn't get into number 10 at this moment.
Tom Harwood, could Jeremy Hunt still do it?
Well, Jeremy Hunt has a very tricky position to balance. He has to get media attention. He's been doing stunts. He's been he's been sort of almost hitting out at Boris to an extent. But obviously, if he hits out at Boris and goes too hard on the personal attacks, that isn't seen as being very charitable, very sporting. It doesn't go down well with Conservative Party members. So he's got an incredibly difficult tightrope to walk. And he has been walking it for the last week. He did have a better start to the week than Boris, but really his momentum that he tried to build through the weekend, through Monday and Tuesday, trailed off at the end of the week as we saw Boris really get his mojo back after that row story died down from the weekend. We've seen Boris reorganise his campaign HQ and really, in the hustings that he's done this week, and he's done several, he's been much more, there's been more vim, more verve, more vigour. He's been talking with more energy, this Boris of old, this Boris that we know from London Mayor. This is the kind of Boris that we've been seeing towards the end of this week, and it's really been casting Jeremy Hunt out into the shadows a bit.
Not least because he's done more appearances this week, Tom Harwood.
No doubt. So we've got a new top team. Before this week, when everything was focused on the parliamentary stages, it made sense for Boris to sit in the corner office of Portcullis House that he has and have meetings with MPs and keep a low profile in the media. But now the contest is out to the membership, it's right that he's doing all of these debates, all of these hustings, all of these public meet and greets. He's doing 16 regional hustings around the country. He did a debate on the BBC. He's doing a debate on Talk Radio. He's doing a debate on ITV as well. He's doing so much more meeting and greeting, and it is paying dividends for him now. When people can see Boris, when he's interacting with them, that's when he gets head and shoulders up above the competition. He's someone who has a personality and people trust. People like a politician who doesn't try and mince their words, who doesn't pretend he's anything he's not. And that's who Boris is, and he's bringing back a certain legitimacy to politics that has been missing for the last few years. We're not going to have robotic premiership with Boris. We're going to have something a lot more authentic, and I think that's what a lot of people are crying out for. And
to you, Jade Azim, so these tactics of keeping him quiet for several days, have they worked?
I mean, I'd have to agree with Tom on the sort of the populist aspect of Boris versus sort of Jeremy does represent that sort of technocratic, old school. I certainly think that Boris exuberates and he absolutely thrives on this public stage. So the more he does get out, and the more he actually evades questions. So the more that he gets criticism from the press, he plays on that populist aspect. He plays on that sense that, like, oh, these people have no idea what we're talking about. I'm the insider that can be your outsider in that respect. And I think that the more that he sort of plays on that Boris of the London Mayor type, except making sure that it looks like the establishment and Parliament and everyone is out to get him, it certainly works in a sort of Trumpian way that he can build on that sort of sense that he is the populist outrider, despite, of course, having been in Westminster and having been in politics for quite a while.
Well, we've got a few more weeks of it yet, haven't we? Thanks both for your time today, Jade Azim and Tom Harwood.
Thank you.